Hello, I am Rolando Garza. I am the archaeologist and chief of resource management here at Palo Alto Battlefield National Historical Park. And today I'd like to talk to you about the prehistoric archaeological record of the Rio Grande Delta. Now, this is an image of the modern Rio Grande Delta. This coastline stabilized at about 4,500 years ago. But well before that, we have the Paleo Indian period, starting about 11,000 years ago, going up to about 8,000 years ago. Um, and as you know, as you've been learning today, if you didn't already know, archaeology archaeologists study the past human cultures by the material culture remains. And when you go this far back, only few stuff. Well, it also depends on the context and the environment they're left in. But stone is probably the predominant artifact material type that survives this period, and that's why archaeologists use the tool types to kind of put these groups into periods or so. So here we have some of the top Paleo Indian points that we find. Up on the upper left, we have the Clovis, going to the Folsom, down to the Scottsbluff, and ending with the Angostura at the bottom right. Now, Paleo Indians can be called or characterized as the big game hunters. We have a small bands of people covering huge territorial ranges, following large Pleistocene megafauna. Now, for this area, the Pleistocene megafauna might have already been out by this time, by about 11,000 years ago or so. And if that was the case, they could have been following some of the more modern large herd animals. But regardless, the Paleo Indians had a presence down here. And then beginning about 8,000 years ago, we have the Archaic period. And that's a shift in technology. You have smaller dart points instead of spear points because you have the introduction of the Atlatl, which is throwing spears, I guess. But the Atlatl is like an extension of the arm, and you greatly increase your velocity and your range with this. And this is a direct adaptation to following the faster, smaller, large herd animals that we know today. Then you get the middle archaic period. And one thing I can say, so with the archaic period, you got larger groups of people uh, exploiting a more diverse range of resources for their subsistence and survival. And the Middle Archaic period, which begins about 4,500 years ago, is a huge population explosion boom, and they are definitely life is changing. Life there, it is exploiting more and more diverse. The life is getting more and more diverse for these people. You have rabbit sticks come into that. This is, of course, a modern man. He's not a real archaic person. They didn't have cameras back then, but he has a rabbit stick, and that technology is still used, up into the 19th century, maybe in the 20th century, maybe today in some parts. Then you have the Mano and Metate, grinding instruments for producing flours out of seeds, for processing the stuff you get, the stuff you're harvesting and collecting. As with the Paleo Indians, the archaic people, and the late prehistoric in this region, they're all hunter and gatherers. During the archaic period, you get the introduction of a stone pipe, which was used for smoking. I'll let you come to how that has affected humans or so, or was that a quality of life improvement or what? I'll leave that up to you. But anyway, as I mentioned at the beginning, the modern estuary and the coastline developed during the Middle Archaic period, which is important to hear. In the late Archaic, uh, You start to get a shift in technology. It's starting to go down. Maybe, like I said, the middle archaic was the high point during the archaic period. There's a shift. Maybe they overexploited a lot of their resources. Too many people. They overwhelmed the carrying capacity of the environment out here. A shift. Then you enter about 12,000 years ago, up until the European contact in the protohistoric period, you have the late prehistoric period. You get the introduction of the bow and arrow in much smaller points. And these are just different, these are star points. But you get what archaeologists classify as the Brownsville complex in the late prehistoric period. And what's important here to understand and all that. Okay, once the coastline formed about 4,000 years ago, you have 3,000 years of alluvial deposition creating the delta and creating the modern delta area, which humans kind of stopped that during the 20th century with all the drainage work and the damming of the Rio Grande. It's kind of stopped all the built up, but you have meters upon meters of alluvial deposits there, and so you don't have a lot of stone resources. What you get a lot in the late prehistoric, especially, are the finished tools in the archaic, just the finished stone tools. But there are three traits that separate the Brownsville complex from their surrounding hunter-gatherer groups. One, they had a sophisticated shell working industry. Two, they had a use of dedicated cemetery sites and sites that they would go back after seasons and years and use the same site to bury their people, their deceased. And then third is there's evidence of trade with Mesoamerica. So these are just some various raw marine sources. You have the quahog at the bottom. It's a very heavy, tough shell that you use as a hammer. Very effective. Like I said, we don't have stones around here. We do not have cobbles. We don't. We have the tools we get are probably brought for trade, and they're probably already almost finished or proofs. Then you have the cockle shell, used as ladle, used for many things. And then you have up on the upper right a pumice stone, which is volcanic rock that is washed in on shore, and they use it as abraders for hides, for ceramics, all that. But you also have shells that weren't modified too much, but just used as scrapers, like this Doleena scraper. You can see the wear on the inner edge of that exterior edge, used for either a scaling fish, cleaning hides, whatever you can do. But the dominant shell of choice, probably the most important marine shell resource, was the lightning whelk conch. And here's an example. It's not, I don't have an intact one, but this is the columella on the right, the center stem, and then part of the whorl body on the outside there. With the columella, you can have tools like these little points, or that could be mounted or on a shafted on a cane or reed, and used for spearing. But you have the production of a lot of ornamental pieces here. It can be called danglers, columella danglers. Here's one with incising. There's just a wide variety in archaeological context. Then you have the body, the outside of it. And you notice from here, they used a groove. They used to groove with with a stone tool, groove in a little, wear out a little groove in there, and then snap it. You can see the tall break. It's how you know it's definitely culturally made. Then they also made tools out of that. These little awls, hooks. But it's a lot of ornaments, a lot of ornaments that are for here and for trade to get other resources down here. Little bars that would be fastened on bodies, gorgets. Here's one. We got Cursia Taro. They also had Oliva shell tinklers, which had coyote teeth or so in it to make the noise as you walked around and attached to the body. Here is archaeological artifact next to some modern Oliva shells. And this is shell and bone artifacts from 41 CF2, which is known as the Floyd Morrisite. And you just see the array of shells that were found and bone artifacts used to ornament the body. And then, as I mentioned, there's evidence of trade with Mesoamerica. We have pieces of jadeite. Of course, this is just a picture of some jadeite I found off the internet. Serpentine, that's only coming from Mesoamerica. And then we've had some obsidian that has been sourced from the archaeological collection up in Taro to these three obsidian sources in Mesoamerica. But one of the big telling evidence of trade is the ceramics we have, which can be considered somewhat unusual for hunter and gatherers to have, but we do have it. We have a tradition of ceramic here. Also, one thing I need to mention, we owe the breadth of our knowledge about the prehistoric record down here to an avocational archaeologist, A.E. Anderson. He was the county engineer from the 20s to the 40s, and he systematically documented and collected artifacts from Cameron County. And his collection is up at the Texas Archaeological Resource Laboratory, part of UT Austin. And it has really provided us the wealth of our knowledge of that. And many grad student has used it for his thesis or dissertation there. And it's important. It's important. We don't know that much about the Brownsville complex because there hasn't been a lot of scientific investigation, large-scale scientific investigations in this area compared to other areas of Texas. So we thank God for A. Anderson and the preservation of the sites and continue to study his collection. These are just some pictures of his hat. It shows the Wastecan influence, not manufacturer. And the trade was through the Wastecan region and gone down to the other groups down into Middle America, but through the Wastecan interlayers or so. And at that, I just want to thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat. Thank you very much. Have a great day.